Good morning. Buenas. Half a day. This public hearing conducted by the Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts is hereby called to order at 10:34 Chamorro Standard Time. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on Tuesday, July 16, 2024, with a second notice provided on Monday, July 22nd, 2024. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website and the Government of Guam Public Notices portal. This morning, the committee will hear testimony on the following bills. Bill number 312-37, COR, introduced by Senator Dwayne Nicolas, an act to add a new subsection 8104C4 to Article 1, Chapter 8, Title 5A, Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations, and amend subsection 8105C1F of Article 1, Chapter 8, Title 5A, Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations, relative to exempting uncertified teachers who have more than 4 years of teaching experience from the general knowledge requirement examination of the Guam Educator certification. We'll also be hearing bill number 317-37 COR, introduced by Senators Dwayne Nicolas and Agustin, which is an act to authorize the operation of Guam Public Schools that are awaiting inspection for school year 24-25. I'd like to welcome my colleagues joining us today. Of course, the author of the two bills we're hearing, Senator Dwayne Nicolas, and Senator Tello Taitagui. And I believe I saw Senator Joanne Brown making her way, but wait till she gets here. So thank you, colleagues, for being here. Before we begin, I'd like to go over the general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. The chairperson of the committee may order the removal from a hearing any member of a legislator in Guam who fails to observe proper decorum pursuant to the 37th Guam Legislature standing rules. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in the removal from the hearing by the host. We'll now proceed with hearing testimony on bill number 312-37 CORE, and we'll begin by allowing the primary sponsor to open on the bill. Senator Nicolas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the swift hearing of the bill. I really appreciate your efforts on that regard. Thank you, sir. With the legislation, the legislature in Guam intends to exempt uncertified teachers who have more than 4 years of teaching experience and have received satisfactory performance rating for the general knowledge requirements examination of the Guam Educator certificate. This legislation aims to address the shortcomings of the generalized process and the requirements of the Guam Educator certification and allows uncertified teachers who have accrued several years of teaching experience have received satisfactory performance evaluations to receive their teaching certificate. The teaching experience and satisfactory performance rating of uncertified teachers should be accounted for the educator certificate and should serve in lieu of the general knowledge requirements examination. I was an educator for such a short time, but in that short time I've experienced the process, and I want to bring light to the predatory practices of Praxis and the company that is a purveyor of that those tests. I've been through the tests. I've taken the tests. I passed the first time, but there are other people who who constantly fail, and I think if they fail, there's a system in there that allows for them to fail even more every time they take the test. I think it's predatory in nature, and I think this is the main reason why I'm pushing for other alternative methods. I see that there are methods to grant certification, but I also want to offer my solution to this problem. I know we have educators out there who stuck it out with DOE through thick and thin as uncertified teachers. Some of them, nearly 2 decades and are still uncertified because of the predatory practices of the praxis. And I think it's unfair. We have one teacher who testified in the last bill. She teaches calculus. She can't pass the English exam. She's done it for decades, nearly 2 decades. And she's passed students. These students have gone off to get their degrees. She sacrificed, stuck out with DOE for many years. We don't give her the rights and the protections of other teachers who have gotten their certification. That says a lot. And it's by this bill I plan on addressing that injustice. And with that, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Nicolas. We'll now move to public testimony on Bill 312-37 COR. If you signed up to provide testimony on the bill, please approach the table, have a seat. And we'll just remind you that when you provide testimony, you begin by stating your name and title for the legislative record. We have Attorney Daniel Summerfleck, also acting superintendent of the Guam Department of Education, Bobby Damos, and from the Guam Educator Certification Commission, Roberta Abade. If we went in order of sign-up, it would be Attorney Summerfleck first, but Attorney Summerfleck, do you care to defer to anyone? Okay, so I guess we'll start with Mrs. Abade. Again, please state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
My name is Roberta Abadai, and I'm the current chairperson for the Guam Commission for Educator Certification. I have provided written testimony. I actually provided one for the June 3rd meeting, and when that was rescheduled, I provided a second one for the July 8th with additional information. Would you like me to read both of them?
Sure, ma'am. Thank you. And our apologies, we were in a 3-week session, and so we actually did have to postpone the hearing a couple times. Thank you.
Actually, it worked out because I had laryngitis for the last meeting, so thank you.
I'm glad you found your voice, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, Guam Commission for Educator Certification has shown its willingness to make exemptions and adjustments to the requirements as we have during the pandemic, the SOP in lieu of 5 points of practice, island emergency situations, educator hardships or personal emergencies, lack of access to subject assessments, and the initial grandfathering in of all teachers who had a valid certificate prior to the beginning of practice core requirements, etc. As a commission, we take time to consider the situation, confirm the requirements in law, and address ways to assist educators who are trying to receive or renew their certification. GCEC has not been asked, informed, or consulted on any bills that are coming forward from Senator San Nicolas. These bills are being presented without feedback from the group of people selected and trusted by the legislature to monitor educator certification. We are willing to listen to suggestions and will act on those in the best interests of the children of Guam. For a general statement, the Guam Commission for Educator Certification does not support any changes to the certification requirements that are not allowed to be reviewed, discussed, and considered by the commissioners during the GCEC meetings. Fiscally, it is difficult to determine if there would be any impact on GCEC from the changes recommended in Bill 312-37. Those who are currently teaching without a teaching certificate are often teaching in private or charter schools where certification is not required. If the proposal to provide certificates to those teachers were to impact anyone, it would be the private and charter schools, since teachers requesting certificates may decide to leave their previous schools in order to seek schools in the GDOE system for better pay and benefits. This would impact the GDOE system but would not necessarily provide much in the way of a fiscal increase for GCEC. Teachers in the private and charter schools seem happy with their selection of schools, according to news articles. How many, or if any, would take that option to move to a new school is unknown. GCEC does not have information on how many of the current GDOE teachers are teaching without a certificate above a temporary certificate, which is limited to a 4-year period. The difference in cost between a temporary and initial certificate is $10, so the impact will be negligible for GCEC fiscally. If someone is teaching in the GDOE school system without a teaching certificate, only the school or the Guam Department of Education would have that information. The GCEC recently approved an SOP to enable teachers who are within 5 points of passing the subject assessment to opt for a class or 2 years of exemplary quarterly assessments to substitute for the points lost. The suggestions of the bill are far below that requirement, and that the requirements are only satisfactory performance, but does not identify the number of years of satisfactory performance required. Someone could have 3 annual assessments of unsatisfactory evaluations and 1 year of only a satisfactory assessment, and would therefore qualify the way the change is written. GCEC tries to provide the schools quality teachers, and GCEC is expecting 2 years of quarterly exemplary assessments, while the bill is only requiring 4 years of teaching experience and a satisfactory performance. No designation of how many years, how recent the performance, and satisfactory is lower than the exemplary required for substitution for practice 5 points. What consistency is there in evaluations? Are the teachers being assessed with the same professional development that other teachers are required to complete if they are considered temporary positions? Would they be assessed based on a staff assessment which does not measure quality of teaching but attendance at work? The bill suggests that teaching for 4 years would fit under category subsection 8104C without acknowledgement of the explanation for that section. It states candidates for the following certificates due to their unique specialization, stating that teachers who have 4 or more years of teaching experience from an accredited school in Guam is not a unique specialization. There is a reason that Chamorro language, basic preschool, and career and technical education are listed under this section. They are unique specializations and have additional separate requirements. Basic Educator Chamorro Language and Culture Teaching Certificate may be issued to an applicant who presents evidence of completing 60 semester hours of college credit to include at least 12 semester hours of Chamorro language and demonstrates proficiency in the Chamorro language as established by the Chamorro Studies Division of the Guam Department of Education. In other words, Chamorro language teachers must demonstrate proficiency in a test by Chamorro Studies Division. They are not required to take Praxis Core, but they are tested. Basic Educator Preschool Certificate may be renewed any number of times with evidence of satisfactory performance evaluation by the administrator and 15 clock hours of Head Start, specific in-service professional development that is classroom-focused and regularly evaluated by the Head Start program of the Guam Department of Education. The preschool educators are evaluated by the school administrator and by the Head Start program. The Head Start program has been considering making more rigorous requirements. The Professional Career and Technical Education Teaching Certificate may be issued to an applicant who presents evidence of a bachelor's degree in a technical area of specialization, such as industrial technology, career and technical education, industrial arts, or engineering, and including at least 24 semester hours in career and technical education, and presents evidence of either of the following: 1 year verifiable work-related technical experience beyond the apprenticeship or learner level in the area of the technical specialty to be taught, or 1 year recent successful teaching experience in the technical specialty area for which the candidate was professionally trained. Career and technical education teachers must demonstrate work-related experience beyond an apprenticeship, along with the specific courses in the field and in education. The requirements to change to 4 years of teaching in an accredited school does not indicate the Praxis Core and Praxis Subject Assessments and Principles of Learning, PLT tests, have been passed, almost passed, failed completely, etc. Just because someone has been hired to teach in a school and has done so with a satisfactory assessment sometime during those 4 years does not mean they have fulfilled all the requirements other initial educators have completed. The Guam Department of Education would then have two groups of teachers: those who are certified and work for their certification requirements, and those who have a certificate without completing the same work successfully. Are they both going to get the same pay? That is a concern of GDOE. The concern of GCEC is that the children of Guam receive the best education that is possible. Therefore, GCEC does not support the changes presented, which would lower the standards of educators. And the one for July 8th is an additional testimony, and it provides some background history. Originally, the Guam Department of Education provided the certificates for all educators. The move to separate certification to an independent commission was to ensure the standardization of requirements, the consistency of enforcement, and the removal of outside influences and internal relationships to provide certificates to those who did not complete qualifications. The Commission reviewed laws, education policies, met with stakeholders at all levels of certification over the initial year in order to determine the qualifications that would provide licensure for quality educators, and completed the adjudication process. Since 2011, GCEC has issued 8,219 certificates, either new or renewals, averaging 632 certificates a year over a period from 2011 to 2023, with some certificates issued for a 5-year or a 10-year period. We are currently in the process of issuing new or renewal certificates to educators for the 2024-25 school year. All of this is being done through the efforts of the commissioners and the outstanding work of our 2-member GCEC office staff, namely the certification officer and the administrative assistant. Discussing the suggested changes identified in Bill 312-37 with other educators, questions were brought up by them. Here are a few of them. Why should anyone study for the test or even take the test if they know that in 4 years they could get a certificate anyway? Is Guam lowering its standards for educators and for education? Who is providing the satisfactory assessments for these teachers? And are they based on a 30-minute visit to a classroom? Would you give a nurse a license if she or he is able to take blood pressure and give out bandages correctly for 4 years? Aren't there other things you need to be sure they know? Even drivers are asked to take a written exam, an eye exam, and a driving test. They are not told that if they have satisfactory driving over 4 years, they will get a driver's license without completing any of the other requirements. Would a teacher who has not completed the requirements get paid the same as a teacher who has put in all the effort to complete all the requirements? Again, those are questions that were given to me by other educators. Bill 312-37 mentions only the general knowledge requirement, but does not clarify which test this is in reference: the core, principles of learning and teaching, or subject assessment. Any of them could be misinterpreted to be a general knowledge requirement. All of them are required to be completed in order to receive a certificate. Based on the information provided in the previous testimony and the addendum provided here, Guam Commission for Educator Certification does not support the changes presented in Bill 312-37, which would lower the standards of educators. Thank you, Senators.
Thank you, Mrs. Abade. Acting Superintendent Bobby Adamos.
Good morning, Senators. My name is Barbara Adamas, and I am the Acting Superintendent. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on this legislation that intends to exempt uncertified teachers from completing the General Knowledge Requirement Examination, or Praxis 1, as a result of having more than 4 years of teaching experience and having received satisfactory performance ratings. I am not in support of Bill 312-37 COR. Had there been more time for me to research the status of our non-certified teachers and any of their corresponding performance evaluations, I would have been more comfortable in reporting any correlation that this bill suggests. With the start of the school year less than just 2 weeks away, I didn't want to impede our HR personnel who are focused on processing new teachers and staff. What is the status of Bill 282-37 COR? This particular legislation intends to waive the Praxis Core math portion. And on May 22nd, 2024, a public hearing was held. So how does Bill 282-37 COR relate to this bill, 312-37 COR? Originally, my question upon reading Bill 312-37 was, why would an educator holding a temporary certificate want to remain in this status for up to 4 years? When we're looking at job security, we're looking at classified pay with salary increments, and these should be determining factors in fulfilling the full certification requirements. And I know it's not for a lack of trying, and I even questioned why 4 years? Why are we targeting at least 4 years? Both the Guam Department of Education and the University of Guam's School of Education provide teachers with assistance, such as providing financial assistance to those individuals holding initial teacher certification with praxis preparatory courses, or for eligible candidates to earn their degree in Master of Arts in Teaching. The Guam Commission of Educators Certification has recently implemented a standard operating procedure for any teacher who failed a portion or portions of the Praxis 1 within 5 points to take a UOG course that would fulfill the math requirement, for example, and that was elaborated earlier with Ms. Abadai. Perhaps more collaboration is needed by the respective entities to, quote, address the shortcomings of the generalized process and requirements of the Guam Educators Certification, end quote. I thank you again for your time and this opportunity to respond. Thank you.
Nicolas, Acting Superintendent. Attorney Summerfleck.
Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today. My name is Daniel Summerfleck. I am here in my personal capacity, not in any other capacity. I'm also here. My wife intended to be here today, but she's down with the flu, so we'll be submitting written testimony as well. My review of Bill 31237 raises serious questions in my mind. My wife was part of the Teacher Corps, received her degree from the University of Guam after student teaching and after satisfactorily performing that. She did not take the praxis, as I recall. She was in that group prior to the praxis. In my capacity as an attorney, I have represented individuals who have taken the praxis and had difficulties with it. There was a controversy a number of years back regarding someone had alleged that he had given answers to teachers. The individuals I represented, one of the individuals I represented was on that list, and it was her desire to pass clearly the practices with no question so that she would stand equal with her colleagues. I don't see in the current legislation even a requirement of a college degree. It basically says if you taught for 4 years and received satisfactory performance ratings, you are capable of being certified as a teacher. So instead of going to college and receiving an education that can be passed on to the students that are in front of them, they could go straight from high school, be put into a classroom, receive satisfactory ratings, and instead of going to college, work for 4 years, and without that college degree, be able to come before a classroom and say, I am a certified teacher. This does not seem right to me. I think that it's very important that teachers who are educators receive an education in how to do it. I think it is vital for our teachers to have that training, to have that mentorship, and to have that supervision of being a student teacher. That, to me, becomes key. At the same time, I do recognize certain issues here. For example, there may be highly skilled individuals with a 4-year degree that may decide they want to teach high school in an advanced area of chemistry, biology, where their expertise in their field stands up on its own. But that's only high school that I'm referring to, and even there, one of the biggest skills that I see in high school is classroom management. These individuals walk in with no classes on classroom management. They walk in with no mentorship. So if you're looking at some form of exception, perhaps I could envision it for high school in specific topics, but that's not what this bill is about. This bill is about saying that the teachers that are in front of our children in elementary school, in middle school, and in high school don't have to have any educational background. They don't have to be learned in their field. They don't have to have any expertise. They need to be able to sit in front of a classroom for 4 years and have someone that brought them into the school who potentially is their buddy rate them satisfactorily for 4 years. One of the things that I didn't anticipate talking about, but Ms. Abede has brought up, and I think it's appropriate, by passing this bill, you are more than likely going to gut all of the charter schools. I've done litigation against the charter schools. The teachers that I've had, I've asked the question, are you certified? No. If you get certified, what's your plan? To go to the GDOE. There was no bones about it. With this bill, theoretically, any charter school teacher who has no education received a satisfactory rating, and Ms. Abede was more thorough in looking at this than I was, and said, is that 4 years of satisfactory, or is that just 1 semester of satisfactory? Can theoretically be brought into our public school system and be put into a classroom. Education is the key to the success of this community. The failure to provide proper education is the failure of this community. We're wondering about fentanyl, we're wondering about crime, we're wondering about all these issues that our community is facing. And I would opine to you, those issues arise early. And having proper role models who are well educated, providing that education to our children, to me, is the key. There is nothing more discouraging than seeing fentanyl, drugs, other things, ice, around our schools, around our buses, around our children. We need professional teachers. We need teachers who have 4 years education, if not more. You know, one of the things that makes me proud of GDOE is the level of education amongst its teachers. I know of 2 teachers that worked with my wife. Out of 3 of them, my wife has her bachelor's. Her 2 co-teachers had masters and now have doctoral degrees in teaching. Would I feel comfortable sending children to doctoral level teachers? Yes. Would I feel comfortable sending my children to a school where someone has been certified because they were there for 4 years? No. Education is the key. I would thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I think a lot of what was said before me has a lot more teeth than what I put forward, and I would thank you for this opportunity.
Studios Masi, Attorney Summerfleck. Ken Fernandez.
Afre, good morning, Senators. Thank you for having me. I'm also here in a personal and professional capacity. Personally, they're living alongside the outcome of what happened in 2012 and 2015 and how the certificates were taken away. And professionally, hopefully, the input we provide today, which is valuable compared to listening so far to everybody's input today, is only going to move GDOE and GCEC forward. So my input today is basically to bring up how to improve the certification process. And I appreciate the bills that keep coming forward because we need to get it to the floor, or come up with a bill that just gives authority directly back to Ms. Abade and the GCEC so that they decide who or what is expected from people who are going to earn certificates rather than it being written in law. They can meet as a commission, decide what the requirements are going to be the coming year, what the practice score is going to be the next coming year, all without having to come back to the legislature asking for laws to be tweaked or changed or amended. And I understand this is an amendment adding on to what is existing, which is, of course, the bachelor's, content knowledge. And the reason I'm really here is for those teachers back in 2012 and 2015, and I'll continue to show up to be their voice. Like I said, they were affected. Some of them are still affected today, trying to get in, and they still face the praxis. What happened back in 2012 when the certificates were kind of given an ultimatum where, let me take 2 steps back. These are teachers who already earned a certificate, met the standard, are in the classroom, right? All of a sudden decided upon some category that they have to go and take the praxis in order to maintain or keep their certificate and stay in the classroom. Over 40 some teachers were affected, maybe more from 2012 to 2015, but just 2012 alone, there were over 40. Like I said, someone personal to me was also affected, so she had to leave, went and worked at the University of Guam, and then eventually, thanks to the Chamorro requirements, and she knew fluent Chamorro, took that route, and I'm proud of her for that, and I'm glad the opportunity was there, or else she probably won't be in the classroom. So my point of view and input is based on how can we get these teachers their certificates back. They had their certificate. They met the standard. We're not lowering standards. They had the certificate. It was taken away thinking it was a blanket requirement. Everybody from here on out, if you're going to renew your certificate, you need to take the praxis. All without offering the option that NCOB itself provided, which is called the High Objective Uniform State Standard of Evaluation, where there were 3 options to determine whether you were highly qualified. It's also known as the House Plan, right? It's currently used for special education because they want that opportunity to be available, or option to be available to the teachers in the special education field to grant them the opportunity to get through and earn their certificate and get in the classroom and share their skills and knowledge in special ed. But back in 2012, from 2001 to 2015, where NCOB was in effect, because I'm not sure if we're aware, but 2016 to present, there's the Every Child Succeeds Act. That trumped or superseded NCOB. Now, the state or the legislature has the opportunity to decide on their own without federal guidance or federal cookie cutter recipes that this is what needs to happen, can decide on their own. So every state could have their own teacher certification requirements per subject, per special education, but House was never provided to the teachers back in 2012. It was three easy evaluation processes. One, actually, I want to commend the bill, although it's similar to one of the options in 3, and I provided it in the input, where you can show true experience from an administrator of the school you are working in that you were getting satisfactory or above evaluations while you were teaching in the classroom, providing service to our public school students. That was never given. It was more of an ultimatum, pass or you're out, no certificate. And some still struggle today. Some of it's 2024. Some eventually pass after 15 to 20 times and just were persistent about it because that's the requirement. But I also commend the opportunities that they're doing. They gave the 5 points. I'm sure a lot of people are benefiting from that. Some of them were missing by 1, missing by 2 since 2012. And they were just constantly having to separate from DOE at the end of the year, reapply at the beginning of the new year. And all of the things that happened because of that ultimatum was teacher increments, teacher salary. They lost out on the anniversary dates. They could have been making maybe $60,000 today, but continue to make a contractual limited term 30 maybe, if not 20. But if they got their certificates back, what can we do to ensure that they're compensated if they're identified as one of those who are not given that legal option to verify and justify their credentials and prove they were highly qualified since 2012 and 2015. I'm hoping that's something GCC can explore. I'm hoping it's something the legislation doesn't restrict them from doing, but I'm hoping that opportunity is also provided. It's House High Objective Uniform State Standards that was given. It's no longer needed today because in 2015 it ended, but it's currently being used as a tool for special education teachers who will need certification requirements. So I love it. It's a good tool. Apparently, federal legislatures believe it's a great tool because now they're using it for teachers who are exceptional students. Thank you for having me this morning.
Cedars Masi, Mr. Fernandez. Is there anyone else who wishes to provide testimony on Bill 312?
I just wanted to remind you that you also have sent to you a testimony from Dr. Gail Hendricks that is also in opposition to the bill.
Yes, we did receive testimony from Dr. Gail Hendricks, GDOE administrator, teacher at UOG School of Education, assistant professor, retired.
And also the questions that Mr. Fernandez brought up, I know they were brought up for the previous bill. I was in Palau at the time doing accreditation, and I did write a response to all the concerns that were brought up, and I did send that to you, but I do not have a copy with me at this time.
Thank you. Thank you for that, ma'am. If there's no one else who wishes to provide testimony, I'll first defer to the main sponsor of the bill if you had any questions or comments for the panel. Senator Nicolas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, my goal is not to lower standards. My goal is to try to assist those teachers who have worked in our education department and assist them in getting their certification. This is an alternative route to the routes you already have mentioned. So my intentions are very pure. They're to address some of the shortcomings, but I do like to address Mr. Attorney Summerfleck. Yes, sir. You know, I didn't quite catch that, and so one of the things that we will work on the amendment is to make sure that teachers do graduate from a four-year accredited, U.S. accredited institution. So we will address that. Thank you. And Dr. Fernandez, sir, what was the previous way teachers got certification before the praxis?
Well, the three were graduate from a U.S. accredited university with a major in special education. There was the fast track. That was a popular thing back in 2009 to 2011 that kind of generated steam and built the pool of candidates for DOE, and they were feeding them out to the schools. In fact, I'm glad you asked that because that just reminds me that a lot of those fast track teachers were the ones who were highly affected, and most of them are still out there in the schools working under limited term or contractual certification without being fully certified, although I believe they still meet the requirement if it weren't for the praxis, because the three have a bachelor's degree, show content mastery, and then, of course, from a U.S. university.
Yes, ma'am.
If I could also address that, all teachers had to take tests prior to the praxis. It was the best test. The best test was one that was run by the Guam Department of Education. Because we have a very small office now, we decided that we could not manage to give a test to all the teachers, and we opted for the praxis format because it's something that is done and we just receive the scores. Every teacher who had a certificate that was certified and accepted as a full certificate automatically got a certificate when we moved into the new section. Those who did not have certificates that were fully certified, perhaps they were waiting to pass a test, etc., they received a certificate with a qualification, and within 2-year time, they were expected to fulfill the requirements, which would have been either courses or passing the test or whatever their particular lapse happened to be on the listing. So all teachers have always had to pass a test of some form, and after the best test, those people were all grandfathered in. The only ones who might not have been grandfathered in were those who had not yet passed the best test or did not have full requirements at the time. Thank you.
Is, ma'am, Ms. Abade, is there any way we can also offer the best tests as well as a different alternative to the praxis?
Not at this time, no. It is too cumbersome for our very, very small office, and we feel that the praxis has been fairly successful for the majority of people who are taking it, and many people do support the use of the tests that we have adopted.
If we gave you the support and, and the funding, perhaps, would there be any way you could think about that in the future, offering that?
We would gladly think about it, but that does not mean that we would be able to afford it, even with additional people, additional money, et cetera, because it is a test that is above and beyond what we are able to manage right now. But we will consider it at our next meeting. I will bring it up in our agenda.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Adamos, you said when the teacher comes in and not fully certified, what is the distinction? What is their distinction from?
Basically, it's the certificate that they would receive from the Guam Certification Office.
Yes,
So they
ma'am.
would either be limited term part-time, limited term full-time.
Okay.
With the limited term full-time, they have a bachelor's degree. They have a bachelor's degree, not necessarily in education. So they are taking courses at the university to get the educational background, to then hopefully work their way to becoming a teacher too, which is full certification.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. When I first became an educator, I did the praxis. Thank goodness I passed. But I came in as an emergency certification, certified teacher, but I just had the certification. I just never, it took a long time before I actually went into education, but it's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life. And so I just want to be able to, encourage those who actually do have a, what is it called, an initial certification or?
Initial educator certificate.
Initial certificate, yeah. So those are the people that I'm actually targeting. Those guys that are not fully certified, but do have some type of training, some education. Of course, 4-year accredited college education. Those are the people I'm really focusing. One of the things that I really enjoyed as an educator and studying to be one was the ethics part of it, is to do no harm. And it was never my intention to, but this is why we have the public hearing, and this is why we share and we dialogue, so that way we can understand fully what we're implementing. But as an educator, as somebody who's been down there, I see the importance of recognizing the hard work of those who stuck it out with the Department of Education. So that's mainly who I'm focusing on, are those teachers who couldn't pass the praxis, and time and time again have always come in, and like the Dr. Fernandez would say that they would, because of their temporary hire, they miss their anniversary dates, miss out on increments and all that stuff. So that's mainly who I'm focusing on. The other thing is I find it quite maybe disingenuous that after 4 years, after you got your your degree and you've taught for 4 years, that, you know, that doesn't amount to anything. And you know, you haven't learned anything, you haven't developed skills. So that's why I kind of put it at 4 years. So I find it disingenuous that some may say that, you know, they still lack skills or training when they've gone on to pass students, and they've gone on and they've, you know, so if there's anything that they shouldn't have gotten a satisfactory performance in the first place if they didn't develop the types of skills that, because if I'm not mistaken, the same evaluation applies to regular teachers, right? Is that correct? Dr. Fernandez? I mean, they don't have.
Yeah, they use the PTEP, and they
the-
usually need it to submit to the certification office as well when
Right.
they reapply.
Right. So, but the standards, right? that
Oh, yeah,
you're-
the minimum is satisfactory.
Right. The PPE, the performance evaluation.
Right.
The-
Yeah, that has something to do with the level of certification you
Right,
have.
but they go through the same questions.
Evaluation, yes.
The evaluations, the same thing.
Right.
For not fully certified teachers and certified.
And fully
It's the same
certified,
thing,
yes.
right? So,
The only thing that changes is whether they do it every 12, 18, or 24 months.
right, okay. I just wanted
Actually,
to.
just to clarify, the Professional Teacher Evaluation Program, the PTEP, it doesn't necessarily apply to limited term part-time teachers. Limited term full-time, yes, if they are in the Masters of Arts in Teaching program, or they discuss the program with their administrator, select their goals, and carry out the process. The PTEP is implemented yearly, and what Dr. Fernandez referred to was the performance evaluation for their increment. And so we have some...
But it's the same, I'm sorry.
It is the same, but it doesn't necessarily apply to the limited term part-time. Some of them may not want to select their goals, be observed, have to meet with their administrator 3 times in the year to have the pre, the mid, the post conference, and then submit their evidence at the end of the year, because they're going to look for another job somewhere else. But when we see teachers who, because I taught at John F. Kennedy High School and I was an administrator there, when you see teachers that are making that commitment and they say, I'm entering the University of Guam Masters of Arts Teaching program, you know, right away, I would pick up on that and say, all right, let's do the PTEP, because then they're showing that they're going to make that effort to pursue certification. And I know the issue is passing the praxis, but the helps are there. You know, more so now with the SOP that the Guam Certification Office recently implemented. And then with what Ms. Abadai was referring to with the BEST test, back in the days we used to call that the beast, because there were still people who were failing that test. And so it was dubbed the beast. It was a math, there was a written part, there was even an oral part of the assessment. And so, you know, going back to the PTEP, it doesn't necessarily apply across the board to every teacher. It depends on their certification.
Thank you, madam.
You're welcome.
I hate tests. Would it be fair to say that parents who transfer their students to charter schools where teachers are teaching without certification, do you think they're lowering their standards? Anybody can answer that. Yes.
I don't think so. They're still putting their trust and faith, and even Senator Wonpat came out in an article a few years ago that's saying these are fantastic, outstanding, experienced, and knowledgeable teachers.
Yes, you know, I've been to our charter schools. I've seen uncertified teachers at their, you know, at their best, and I don't agree. I don't believe that parents lower their standards, and we're lowering our education standards by sending them to charter schools with uncertified teachers. You see where I'm getting at?
Senator, I think I brought it up in the last public hearing, and I didn't want to beat it down, but if you can also look into the fact that if they're taking the Title I funds from the Department of Education, funding the general ed by the student per pupil costs, they're required to be certified. If they're getting funding from a different source, they don't have to. They can decide on their own what their certification requirements and teacher requirements are. But if they're continuing to take or influence and recruit students from the Department of Education for the purposes of other academic goals, then if they're receiving the funds that DOE gets from Title I, public funds, then they have to meet those same requirements too. And I believe Senator Shelton introduced a bill back on to cover that basis. But if they're receiving, I'm not certain if they are, but if they are, they need to meet the same requirements.
I like to think that there are uncertified teachers who are just wonderful teachers, you know.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, and there are out there, and they're probably like the diamond in the rough, but or you know, diamonds who are hard to find, but there are teachers out there. I just wanted to mention that because, you know, everybody's going off and
yeah, and
saying
I'm
that we're
hoping,
lowering our standards.
if
and
I
all
may,
that
if
stuff.
I can just
I just want to be fair here. Right?
Close out that hopefully the certification office expands their beyond the praxis requirement, where some people have masters and have taken the GRE, some people have taken the ACT, taken other numerous tests to prove they have content mastery and knowledge. Not a lot of states since 2015 and Every Student Succeeds Act kind of switched bases. Now they even, if you graduate from the University of Hawaii, any Hawaii College of Education, you're automatically initially certified. You meet the requirements. You don't have to go and take a test. They trust that we should trust that if you go to the University of Guam and graduate from the School of Education, that you did meet the standard. We put you through a rigorous course of study, put you in a practicum, put you in student teacher, threw you out into our public schools to get those hours in, that when you graduate and walk across the stage at the University of Guam as a School of Education graduate, you shouldn't have to walk over and sign up to take the praxis. And that's where a lot of people fall short. Now what they're doing is they're starting to screen them prior to their second or third year into accepting them for the major. You have to pass the praxis before you're accepted into the School of Education. So that's a good way where the college can use it, but once to do it after they've already obtained their degree is kind of a roadblock that some are still experiencing today. I know a few. So.
Thank you, Dr. Fernandez, and thank you, panel, for being here and offering testimony. What I really want to do here is also try to make the bill better, and so that way we can, you know, we can work together and put out sound legislation. Mr. Chairman, I have nothing further. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Nicolas. The committee did receive testimony from Dr. Gail Hendricks, again, GDOE administrator, teacher, and University of Guam, a School of Education assistant professor. And I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit of the testimony from the doctor. And again, this is testimony from Dr. Gail Hendricks. The first question that comes to mind is, why would anyone want to lower the qualifications of those who are going to teach the children of Guam? These young minds are the future of our island. Don't we want them to be provided with the best possible education we can? Teaching is a profession, not an occupation. That requires us to continue to improve and continually strengthen our teacher qualifications. Examinations for certification have been part of the requirements since Director of Education, Mrs. Gloria Nelson, and Deputy Director Ione Wolf introduced requirements in the 1980s. When these two education leaders first introduced the requirement, Mrs. Nelson always said we need to prepare our children for the future and make them ready to compete in the world. I have served as an educator in Guam for more than 50 years, and I was once again disheartened to see a bill introduced that implies teaching can be done by anyone. They just need to stand in front of a group of students and say something, even if the information is incorrect. After all, they went to school. When I first read this bill, an incident I experienced as a principal came immediately to mind. I was observing a limited-term teacher who had been in the system for several years and would qualify for certification if this bill passes. The subject was geography. He was talking about the country of Venezuela. He kept turning and slapping the map he was displaying to indicate where Venezuela was located. The first time he did it, I thought, did I hear correctly? He repeated his statement twice more. I got up and did something I'd never done before. I stopped instruction and asked him to step outside. I asked him if he had the correct map up or did he not notice that he was displaying a map of Asia. He told me he knew it was Asia and that Venezuela was in Southeast Asia. He had been pointing to Vietnam. I immediately had a substitute replace him. How many such errors had previously taken place? What if I had not happened to observe that day? Was there a possibility he would have received a satisfactory? More importantly, how many students, now adults, would be under the impression that Venezuela is in Southeast Asia? Principals cannot be in every classroom every day, all day. Satisfactory is a decision based on what has been observed. Further, principals are required to inform a teacher they are not performing satisfactorily by December, and many of those who are marginal do not demonstrate fully by that date, and they do not belong in the classroom but are required to give a satisfactory. The principal's only recourse is to not accept their referral for rehire the next school year, and they move on to the next school. To say that if someone received 4 or more satisfactory evaluation makes them qualified to be a certified teacher is an erroneous assumption. The general knowledge exams help identify those who do not or will not improve their skills and knowledge to ensure they provide accurate information and build well-researched skills. It also gives principals knowledge about the individuals assigned to their schools. Anyone who teaches assessment will tell you grades need to be based on more than one assessment. The general knowledge examination provides another tool about whether someone should receive a certificate. I truly wish hardworking, dedicated teachers would receive the professional support other professions on Guam do. Instead, there is a movement to reduce the teaching profession. In every profession, professionals must take tests to prove they are competent. Doctors, nurses, lawyers, to name a few, and everyone who sits behind the wheel of a car needs to be licensed, with truck and bus drivers requiring more rigorous licensing. I never hear anyone say, well, they should be given a semi-truck license just because they know how to drive a car. Of course, their lack of knowledge and skill can be immediately seen, while poor instruction may not be seen for years. One final comment. Nurses who come from off-island to Guam are required to take the Guam Nursing Board exams regardless of how long they have served as a registered nurse elsewhere. Some come with large amounts of experience and work in the medical profession for several years before passing the Guam boards, but they are still required to take and pass the Guam Nursing Board exam before becoming a registered nurse. Nurses on Guam are proud of their teaching accomplishments, and rightfully so, and are often commended for their work. What makes the teaching profession different? If you think about it, the teaching profession is a life and death profession too. We just don't see it right away. These are our future leaders, medical professionals, business owners, and yes, teachers. Please stop trying to downgrade the teaching profession and support strengthening it. Our students deserve it, our island deserves it. Thank you for allowing me to provide testimony in opposition to Bill 312-37. Gail F. Hendricks, education doctor, GDOE administrator, teacher, University of Guam School of Education assistant professor, retired. So that again was a testimony from Dr. Gail Hendricks. And I have to say that just some of the comments I had received generally on the bill were really associated with the author's previous bill, which would have eliminated the mathematics requirement of the praxis test. And we have gone from that bill, which eliminated a portion of the praxis, to this bill, which seeks to completely eliminate the praxis certification if a teacher teaches in the system for 4 years. And I did receive a lot of comments on both bills about the bill. And I know in the last hearing, I was reluctant to say lowering the standard, changing the standard, but the comments I got was really a lot of talk about lowering the standard. And someone had even commented to me at the parade, would we do the same thing for police officers? We're just going to take anyone off the street and stick them in a uniform for 4 years and they get a satisfactory rating and then boom, congratulations, you're a police officer. So I guess for me, what I'm kind of struggling with is how much of a problem is the inability to pass the praxis for people who are trying to become teachers, because we're talking about 40 teachers, we're talking about a diamond in the rough. But there are thousands of teachers, thousands of them who have taken the praxis, who have done what it takes to become certified to teach in the classroom. And I just have to say, on its surface, it does seem unfair that we have, can you just tell me, Ms. Abadai, how many certified teachers have gotten certified with GCEC, I guess, since your inception?
It was over 8,900 certificates that we've given over the 10-year period that I provided for you. We give about 632 average every year. Those are for the initial educators, for master educators, for professional educators. That includes all the people who are certified. That includes administrators. librarians, counselors, teachers, Head Start, career educators, the career technical educators, et cetera. So we are giving them, as a regular basis, renewed and new, over 600 a year.
Do you have, so if you've issued over 8,000 certifications, do you have any data on the number of people who have attempted to become certified?
With regard to the passing of the praxis, or with regard to just trying to be certified?
Just with regard to the committee getting an idea of how many people can't pass this thing, and is it really that many people that it warrants, you know, a lowering of the standard or a changing
People
of the
who
standard?
have applied for certification at the office have all passed the praxis. Those who might not have passed a portion of it will sometimes come in to ask us what can be done, but generally they don't let us know that they have not passed the praxis. But considering almost all the graduates from the department or from the School of Education who are graduating with education degrees are coming out as certified teachers, I don't think there's a very large number.
Acting Superintendent Dr. Adamos, are you able to say how many teachers are in the Guam Department of Education system who have been teaching uncertified for, you know, anywhere from 2 to 4 years, maybe? Just trying to get an idea on if this bill were to pass, how many people would be impacted by it.
I was working on getting those numbers, but I didn't want to stop the process with HR since school will be starting. But just from my reference, I know of 5 teachers at JFK, because that's where I was last year, and out of the 5, all of them have eventually passed the praxis with the supports that were offered and are working on getting full certification. Actually, 2 of them are now fully certified. 3 more will be done in December. And so it's a process. They pursued it. They're getting the support that they need, and they've made that commitment to provide their students with the best education that they can.
Yeah, see, if you were coming in here and you were saying, oh, God, there's 100 people who can't pass the praxis, you know, we don't have any teachers, we got the school aid in the classroom, then I think it would be maybe a little easier to argue it for the committee. But I think that's what we're kind of looking for. I mean, do we
Mr.
really
Chair,
want to?
if I may,
Mr. Fernandez,
man, you
please.
just tickled my
Please.
brain. Yeah.
Hold on, sir.
Just from what you say, you tickled my brain,
Yeah.
and I think that's something we should require. If we're requiring our candidates or applicants to seek certification, go through ETS and pass the 3 praxis tests we require, I think we should be able to obtain those data, or GCEC should be able to obtain those data and publish those every year so that we know. Because we know informally that people take it 12, 15, you know, because they come to us frustrated. But that should be like data, you know. That way we say, man, everybody's failing by 1 or 2 points. The next year we can say, we can, like they did today, or this recently, drop it by 0.5 for each category and things like that. But that's good data to know that if we're requiring just ETS to provide the praxis to these applicants, then that's something ETS should be able to provide to the GCEC or DOE.
We have asked the School of Education to provide that information to us. Remember, we are not part of the School of Education. We are a separate entity. The teachers or the candidates do not need to put down GCEC as someone who will receive the grades, but if they're in School of Education, they do have to ask the School of Education to get it. So we have been trying to work with them. Unfortunately, the School of Education was closed because they were cleaning up the offices. We do have a severe mold issue and sicknesses going through. So hopefully this week they will be back into their offices, and we'll continue to work with the dean at the School of Education to get that data. But we have been trying to work on that data to gather it this year. I can support what Dr. Fernandez said, that those who are entering into the School of Education now must take the praxis. That has been for a few years now. If they do not pass, they are able then to do the option that we provided with the SOP, where they can take one of the courses during the School of Education, the 2 years that they have left in the School of Ed that will make up for the missing score. So that we have worked on just this year. But as far as the data, if they don't want to tell us, we can't get it from them, okay? So we have to get it from somewhere else.
Can we ask the University of Guam to see if they know how to read, write, and speak English? Like an entrance exam instead of asking ETS to provide the test.
Acting Superintendent, so as you're well aware, the Guam Department of Education is currently being sued for violations of the Adequate Education Act. One of the tenets of the Adequate Education Act is that GDOE is supposed to be required to put a certified teacher into every classroom. So I guess is your opinion that maybe Attorney Summerfleck could also answer, how do you think this bill passing would affect those requirements?
If the bill passes, I'm even thinking of the work before that in order to ensure that we have the 4 years documented from accredited schools, satisfactory evaluations. What's the standard? They're not all using PTEP, depending on where they're coming from. And if they do get their certificates, of course they're going to fill the vacancies that we have. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best qualified, competent teaching. And I know that's subjective, Senator Nicolas, but in terms of looking at the certification and not watering anything down, that's the best I can answer.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's subjective. I think that we as a community have to establish a standard, and we have to establish a level of quality that, I remember in 2005 they had introduced a bill to do away with a lot of these requirements, and the parent-teacher organizations basically said, hey, if a teacher can't pass the practice, they don't deserve to be teaching my kids. So I don't really want to call it subjective. I think we have these standards in place, and deviating from those standards, maybe you call that subjective. But Attorney Summerfleck, did you have a comment?
I think you summed it up very well, and I think the legislature in the past has summed it up very well by putting forward that we need to have certified teachers in the classroom. And I'm not just referring to certified teachers, I'm referring to special ed teachers that have their special ed certification and all the other individuals in the school. I mean, the one thing that came through to me in sitting in this public hearing is we either have standards or we don't. And at the point where we don't have standards, well then why do I need a driver's license? I've been driving for 60 years, 50 years, Why do I need a driver's license? Can I get a waiver if I've been driving for 10, 20, 30 years that says I don't have to take my driver's test? I don't have to be a licensed driver anymore because I've waived into it? Same thing for my profession. I can say that our Supreme Court is not suggesting giving waivers to people that haven't sat for our Guam bar. And that is, I think, brought forward in Ms. Hendrick's statements, that at what point do we lower our standards? At what point do we not have standards? And at that point, what do we get?
Thank you, Attorney Summerfleck. Senator Teitigwe, did you have any questions or comments for the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You touched on a lot of things that I wanted to speak about, and good afternoon to my colleagues, and especially those who are here today. Yeah, it was kind of deja vu when I was heading over here reading the bill and thinking, wait a minute, we've already heard this bill. It's very similar, so thank you for bringing that up, and I'm kind of flabbergasted about why we're being here when the majority of people who came and testified on Bill 282 was not in favor of the bill. I mean, there was great arguments to it, and Ms. Abade, I'm really glad you're here this time because, if there was anybody I was so looking forward to in that public hearing on that bill was yourself, and I appreciate the testimony that you provided, and also apologize for the delays that happened on this one, but pretty much you said everything the same way. And what really gets me is I understand this bill lowers the standards of educators, but for you to come to us and provide the assistance for those individuals who don't pass this test, those few, compared to the thousands who have passed, to assist them and to provide guidance. But as it was said earlier, that some of them don't even tell you that they failed the test when they come to see you. So it kind of hinders your ability to assist them in moving forward. But you're shown in every aspect of the word of assisting these teachers who really want to be certified, but they just can't pass the test. It's not like I don't believe they don't want to be certified. I just think they need assistance to get certified. So we shouldn't be lowering our standards. The biggest concern I had was accreditation for the schools. This is like our hospital. It has to be accredited, and they're not going to put people in there that are not certified to be doctors or nurses. We'll lose federal funding, and DOE receives quite a bit of federal funding, and the possibility of losing that federal funding because we have lowered our standards. I wanted to read actually into testimony, Dr. Gill's testimony, but our good chairman went ahead and read it into the record. She was my teacher. She was my gym teacher at Derrida Junior High. At the time, I'm saying Derrida, it's been Beneventing now, but, and I've admired this woman for years, and she has guided me in certain areas to push forward on what is right, and definitely not to lose our standards. That's what I wanted to read into the record, but I'm glad he did. Took away my thunder for Hendricks to pat me on the back when I see her. She was a great teacher, by the way. I just think it's very unfair for all those thousands of certified teachers who worked very hard to pass these tests compared to, just a handful of individuals. And like you said, what kind of message are we sending out to our parents? This bill, Ms. Abde, Roberta, is that okay if I call you Roberta? Bill 282 was a bill that just exempt the math praxis, right? When you read this bill, 312, does it mean it's exempting all tests? Because I don't see math praxis in here. I'm just looking at all tests. And that's such a huge difference from the last bill that we spoke on, 282, from just math to now this bill exempting everything.
That is my interpretation of the bill, and I'm sure that will be the interpretation of many people. And when I did have other people read it to get their feedback, they also said the same thing. Why would somebody even want to take a test when they can just teach for 4 years and they never have to bother with it? So their impression as well was that this would exempt all tests from teachers.
Okay, that's what I thought, just to look at that. I mean, it had such a bad review on the first bill that came 282 that why would we now require nothing? The Prax math test, because I think it's similar to the reason why this bill was introduced, just pass everything and not just segregate it just to math. But we all know it's about math. Is this Prax test, dealing with trigonometry or calculus? Is that part of the Prax test, or are you dealing with just like Algebra 1, geometry, things as simple as that in this test?
In many places, it's considered to be the equivalent of an SAT that students take when they are juniors or seniors who enter into college. Oh. It is also sometimes used in place of the GRE graduate test that they have to take before they enter graduate school. And so it's testing some of the same information. And that's why we're offering the SOP now, where if they're having problems with a particular area, perhaps in math, as you mentioned, trigonometry, they can take a course that could be a 1-credit course, which would be 15 hours, just to get the skills that they need for it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Chair, I mean, that's really all the questions I have. I don't feel that our parents deserve to be told that they're downgrading our teachers that are teaching their children. I don't think that's something that I want to resonate out to the public right now. And I think anyone who decides to place their children into charter school, which is the same, well, it's not the same, but in other words, you don't pay to go to charter school, and you don't pay to go to DOE. I think it's a choice of a parent where they want to put their child, and not to, so that we just, I'm sorry, dumb it down so they can go to GDOE instead of a charter school. It doesn't make any sense to do that. So anyways, I'm just kind of dumbfounded and lost about this. But thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity.
Swansea, Senator Tydegui. Senator Brown?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Certainly welcome to all of you for being here this morning to provide your testimony. I mean, ultimately, what's of concern to me is the quality of education that our children are receiving in the public school, because we continue to receive testimony and input that a number of our students that are graduating from public school are not able to pass some of the basic tests that are needed to get into key operations in this government. And we hear that regularly. And that's what concerns me. I mean, I'm a product of both public education on Guam and private education. That's, I think, the bottom line for me is the quality of education that our kids are getting. We invest more money, even though every year we hear DOE doesn't get enough. I mean, it's almost tripled since my last life here in the Guam legislature. I saw that a kindergarten teacher at level 5 is being paid $92,000 a year. I go, gosh, I've missed my calling. I should have been a kindergarten teacher. I think my life would be a little less stressful, even though I know keeping, children at that age, getting their attention and keeping them focused is a challenge. But I think we also recognize that what's important is ensuring that our kids are getting the education. That's what concerns me, is when I hear that these students might be going on to the university here and having to take remedial courses and not being able to pass what are basic tests that they need for employment. So that's the concern, even more to me than the teachers. Teachers are important, yes, but if the end product and the test scores of these children, or we have those that are slipping through the system, that are not getting the education they need, that are not prepared for life, which to me is the most important thing, then that's what we need to look at. Children that do well will succeed. Whatever environment you put them in, they will almost always do well. If they have parents that are attentive and supportive of their children's education, odds are fairly good you're going to get a good student. But where we're failing, and where that's what bothers me, is because we need to really focus on the quality of what's coming out of our educational system, because we have students that are lacking those skills. And that's what I think we need to focus on. If it's the issue of the credentials of the teachers, I mean, the requirements are there, the majority of the teachers are passing it, then by all means, that's a standard that DOE has put in place, and I think we want to see that. But the next step is, how is that education getting passed on to students? Because we simply have social promotion in our educational system, and those children are not prepared with the most basic abilities coming out of our DOE system. And that is a reality today. We have those that succeed, yes, but we also have a layer of students that are coming out that are not meeting those requirements, that are what we may say have been failed by the system. And that concerns me, because these children are not prepared to go out there to get into the work environment. And the opportunities that they could take advantage of, they're not able to, because they don't have that skill set. Basic reading, basic writing, basic arithmetic. And we need these people. We continue, I know our chairman, our other colleagues here, we continue to hear at hearings that we have important operations in this government, that we need that employee to be out there to do the job, and they're saying we cannot. You get 1,000 applicants, and maybe we're down to 40 for the Guam Police Department? Do we need police officers? Yes. I mean, there's many key operations in this government. We cannot get employees that apply for these jobs because they can't meet the basic requirements. So that's something we need to be focused on. I'm not for lowering the standard. I mean, if there's an opportunity for those that are not able to pass, and there are, and I appreciate, Ms. Abade, you providing options that are available, that if they're within a certain percentage point, there are things they can do to make up for that so that they can get credentialed. I appreciate that. Or if there's no limit on how many times they can go back and study and come back and take the tests, then, there are going to be those that for whatever reason are not able to pass. I mean, you can put me in a different environment. I would probably fail if it's something I have no background on, education, experience. I probably would fail, as any of us that are taken out of our area of expertise. That's just the reality. But, I don't weigh this with, is this better than you're certified and you work in a public school education versus charter? I mean, my child attends a charter school, and I will tell you even at my age, and I'm just short of a PhD. I have a master's degree. I'm a few years from now, I'm going to have to get a tutor because even I'm looking at the level of education and the speed that he's learning and the curriculum, and I'm even kind of wondering, okay, can I help him with homework tonight? Do I have to look this up? So it depends. I mean, it depends on what the outcome is, because I know we have a lot of good teachers in the private schools and also in the charter schools that are not, we say not certified, but none of these children are coming out exceptional. And some are rivaling, if not exceeding, public education on average. So I think those are things we need to be mindful of, and we'll see. I'm not going to be here years from now when the further experiment of these charter schools go down the road. I mean, it's a question of DOE will survive, or will the charter schools become the priority? Will more of them get developed because there's a need out there that parents feel the public education system is not meeting? And so be it. You know, I don't think the institution needs to exist to benefit itself. Ultimately, we want to ensure that these students are learning and that they're prepared for life. That's, I think, any parent, that's probably the most important thing you want, is that your children have the skill sets and are prepared to either go on to higher education if that's the desire, or what is becoming the more standard trend. A lot of them are going directly into the workforce and can get and be, you know, earn incomes that exceed those of us that have degrees. So I understand the intent of the author in wanting to address this, but I think overall, for the bigger picture interest of our community, I certainly have reservations with regards to lowering the standards. But I appreciate your input. Thank you for your time this morning and giving us all an education on the work that you're doing. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Brown and Senator Tydegui for your comments. At this time, I'd like to offer the main sponsor of the bill an opportunity to close on it. Senator Nicolas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everybody, for showing up here and offering testimony. If anybody knows me, you know, I'm not a betting man. I don't gamble, but I know I'm right about this one. I just feel it, and it's worth every effort. I feel that the praxis is very predatory. I feel that it's very, it's not right that we subject people to these types of tests countless times over and over and over and over again at a price of $130 every day, every time they go back to take the test. It's wrong. And offering no alternative, in spite of knowing all this, I think it's wrong. We shouldn't subject our people to that. We shouldn't subject educators to that. I do, however, don't believe that I'm lowering standards. I feel I'm offering an alternative to the predatory nature of the praxis and offering and encouraging educators to come forward. I didn't go through the initial training as an educator, and I wish we had an opportunity to find out, you know, open up your chest and look at what kind of heart you got and determine that way if you can be a good teacher or not. I wish we could do that, but we can't. And not everything is perfect in life. Nothing. That's why we're constantly talking about things here, because nothing is perfect. I do, however, feel that, I had this story about a kid. He was socially promoted all the way up to freshman. I was a freshman school counselor. Could not speak, could not write. Parapros were always chasing him around, school aides chasing him around, always jumping the fence. And one day I decided to give it a shot. I was just a school counselor. I brought him in, started to talk to him. He just couldn't talk. But I kept working on this kid, and by the time he became a senior, started to talk. Little bits here and there. But it was because, that constant attention that I gave to him. And it's one of those things that those are one of the badges that I wear here, It was that kid. But I never wanted to give up on him. And I don't want to give up on these teachers as well, who stuck it out and worked for our education department time and time again, and have produced productive members of our society. I don't want to let them down. This is why I did that. They come in, they work harder than sometimes most certified teachers, and they do it for a lot less. And so those are the teachers that I'm standing up for. They put their heart and soul into it. And so, you know, we'll see where this goes, and, you know, maybe we can make the amendments as necessary, see how we can work together. Ms. Abade, you know, maybe we can talk more how we can make things better. Thank you, Dr. Adamos and Attorney Summerfleck and Dr. Fernandez for your input. And we'll see where this goes, and I think it's worth a shot. Give it a chance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Nicolas, and again, thank you to the panel for your testimony. If you could please provide the information to the committee that we requested.
As soon as I can get it from School of Ed.
Thank you. Dr. Adamos, I know you said you don't want to bother HR, but if you could provide just that information, the number of teachers who are currently teaching in the GDOE public school system who aren't certified. Thank you. Thank you, Acting Superintendent. And that concludes our hearing of Bill 312-37. Of course, the committee will continue to accept written testimony for up to 10 days after this hearing. We now move on to Bill 317-37, COR, introduced by Senator Dwayne Nicolas and co-sponsored by Senator Joseph Agustin, an act to authorize the operation of Guam public schools that are awaiting inspection for school year 2024-2025. Anybody who's here to provide testimony on this bill, please come to the table and have a seat. And at this time, I'd like to defer to the bill's main sponsor for his opening on Bill 317-37 COR. Senator Nicolas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again for holding this this public hearing and doing it in a speedy manner. I introduced this bill under the direction and working together with folks of the Department of Education. What they seek to do is to allow for the Department of Education superintendent to allow for the opening of schools that are awaiting inspection. As a school counselor myself, I remember, you know, going to work, and there were portions of the schools that were shut off and not accessible to students, and you know, it's noted that we weren't supposed to go there. And I feel that those types of determination can be made by the people we put in charge to run the schools and the superintendent. I believe that, I wholeheartedly believe that this measure aims to bring all of us together. We can have cooler heads prevail and work together to improve our delivery of education. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Nicolas, once again, everybody who wants to provide testimony on Bill 317-37, please come and have a seat at the table. Deputy Superintendent Anderson, did you want to? Let's just go ahead and start with the Acting Superintendent, Dr. Bobby Adamos. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Hafa-day Senators, I'm actually reading this testimony on behalf of Dr. Swanson. It is my pleasure to offer testimony today in support of Bill number 317-37 COR. The proposed bill will allow the Guam Department of Education to continue to operate schools that are awaiting inspection during school year 2024-25. The current legislation that provides this flexibility expired July 12, 2024. During the past year, we have been able to have 19 schools pass inspection, the most recent being Liguan Elementary School. 1 year ago, I arrived to take on the challenges of leading the Guam Department of Education with a high priority on bringing all the schools up to standards to pass inspection and gain a passing grade from the Guam Department of Public Health. During July and August, we were able to make sufficient repairs to recover from Typhoon Mawar and begin addressing decades of deferred maintenance issues and open school on a delayed calendar. During the past year, we have been working closely with DPHSS and make significant progress in bringing schools into compliance. This body provided the legislative flexibility for us to continue to operate and work on improvements at the same time. In 2 instances, schools failed inspection and had to revert to online learning while they could be re-inspected and pass. This, coupled with a number of schools sharing campuses in alternating day configurations, worked significant hardships on families and complicated DPW's ability to provide adequate transport as well. In the end, we were able to decouple nearly all of the doubled up student bodies and inspect and reopen campuses. As we approach the new school year, we will have all campuses ready to open on time, August 8th, for students on their own campus, except for Simon Sanchez and FBLG Middle School, that remain in double session while their schools are renovated or replaced. The schools that have been inspected and passed are on schedule to be re-inspected based on their anniversary date, thanks to your efforts and support. The remaining schools are scheduled for re-inspection or refurbishment, followed by inspection, but this process cannot be completed prior to the scheduled opening of school. Working at our capacity and in collaboration with public health, we have been able to improve all of our schools, successfully inspect 20, and develop a schedule of continued maintenance and inspections. Your support of this bill will provide the needed flexibility my team and I require to complete the process of bringing all of our schools up to standard and continue to make improvements. The conditions described in the initial paragraph of the bill of the consequences of closing the schools remaining to be inspected would have a crippling effect on learning overall, family disruption, and significant impact on the local economy. I am asking your support in passage of Bill number 317-37COR to allow GDOE to continue on its successful path that we have been following, provide schools that are made safe while they await inspection, and successfully bring the entire system up to DPHSS standards by the end of school year 2004-2005. I draw your attention to the progress already made and assure you that there is no reduction in will or effort to complete the tasks ahead of us to come into total compliance. Respectfully submitted, Dr. Eric Swanson, Superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Superintendent Adames. Will you be submitting testimony on your behalf?
On my behalf, I actually support the bill and also encourage Chris Anderson with his testimony in the work that we have done collaboratively. Sure. Thank you.
Deputy Superintendent Anderson.
Good afternoon, Senators, and Senator Barnett, thank you very much for always promoting me each time I come before you. I am the administrator for the Student Support Service Division with the Guam Department of Education and also a member of the School Readiness Task Force. Thank you for your continued partnership and support. The passage of Public Law 37-80 that moved the expiration of school sanitary permits to the date of their inspection has been instrumental in eliminating the challenge of having all 41 schools inspected after June 30th and before the beginning of each school year. However, more is needed to ensure that all schools are able to open on Thursday, August 8th, 2024. The department appreciates your leadership and is hopeful that all senators will agree with the need and urgency to pass Bill 317-37 into law. Since school year 23-24 to the current date, the department has successfully passed 19 school inspections. Harry S. Truman Elementary School just completed their inspection but pending their final report, and Maria Yojoa Elementary School is currently under inspection and scheduled for completion the week of August 5th. At best, there will be 22 schools with current sanitary permits before the start of school year 24-25. This leaves a balance of 19 schools pending inspection, and of this number, 8 schools are slated for extensive refurbishment work tied up with the AG's and Governor's Office. An FBLG middle school renovation contract, which was awarded in April of 2024, is not slated for completion until after January of 2025. Bottom line, a little less than half of our schools will be able to operate without the passage of Bill 317-37. The average cost incurred for preparing schools to pass an inspection is conservatively estimated at roughly $7,500. If you take this cost and multiply it by 38 schools, The total annual cost of inspections is approximately $286,806. The DOE budget appropriation for the past several years has been underfunded and unreasonable to allow the department to effectively address critical facility issues. Although not part of the scope of this bill, perhaps the 37th Guam legislature can consider increasing the number of years between inspections from 1 to 4. This would allow the department to commit limited resources to a more manageable 10 schools per year. Since my involvement with the School Readiness Task Force in June of 2023, the Facilities and Maintenance Division has been working under triage conditions with almost all their time and effort dedicated solely in 2 areas: public health inspection, preparation, and emergencies. As such, they have not been able to address long-standing deferred maintenance. The Guam Department of Education School Facility Master Plan, which was published in May of 2022, identifies deferred maintenance and the development of new spaces and facilities at a total cost of approximately $250 million. Deferred maintenance was estimated to cost $110 million, $70 million being the category of health and safety. Although there is approximately $116.3 million from the American Rescue Plan to address capital improvement projects and critical facility issues, the funds are insufficient and expire September 30th of this year. A consistent and reliable funding source is needed each year to perform regular facility maintenance and operations. Each fiscal year, the department faces both financial and human resource challenges to address deferred maintenance. This reality is exacerbated by the public health regulatory requirements and the expectation of Public Law 37-4 that all schools be inspected and issued a sanitary permit prior to students entering its doors. In my opinion, the department will need several more years to address all the deferred maintenance and to fully comply with its existing laws. The department's school sanitation program, established in partnership with the Department of Public Health in 2016, has established a good working program that requires 2 self-inspections per year every 6 months using the school safety liaisons trained annually by the Department of Public Health and Social Service Environmental Health Division. These reports, as well as the DPHS inspection reports and other task force products, are readily accessible to the community via the Department of Public Health and Social Service Sanitation Inspection Status link on the DOE website page. The department is committed to maintaining visibility and transparency of school readiness conditions and providing students and their families with the most conducive learning environment possible. The passage of Bill 317-37 is a critical step in addressing the immediate needs of the department and instrumental in allowing us to welcome our 24,000 students back to another school year on Thursday, August 8th, 2024. Thank you for the opportunity to provide written testimony.
Si Swasi, Administrator Anderson. Attorney Summerfleck.
I don't know, well, first of all, my name is Daniel Summerfleck. I'm here speaking on my personal behalf. I'm also speaking on behalf of my wife, who is not able to be present today because she's got the flu. I have been attending the oversights hearings, and I would call the attention of the senators to the 7/18/24 oversight hearing statement produced by the Department of Education. I'm particularly looking at line on page 9 of there, which puts forward that 18 of our schools need to be inspected. It takes out Simon Sanchez and it takes out FBLG. George Washington High School is expected to be inspected in April of 2025. Currently, it has 72 demerits. I believe that's an F. In Irahan Middle School, April of 2025, 73 demerits. Jose Rios, March of 25. And it keeps going up. Marshall Sablan, Juan M. Guerrero, next month. The question that I see when I look at this legislation is a question that I'm confronted with often. This past weekend, in my capacity, I spoke to child care programs. And I spoke about ADA and accessibility. And I realize that's not what we're talking about today. And as I was going through my talk, I pointed out that 51 years ago, they passed the Rehab Act. 34 years ago, I think it is, they passed the ADA. This body came forward 14 years ago and passed the Adequate Education Act. When I was doing that talk, and I didn't include the Adequate Education Act, one of the service providers asked me a question. He said, well, isn't there a grandfather clause? And my immediate thought was, are you asking for a 50-year grandfather clause? Are you asking for a 34-year grandfather clause? Was your program even open 34 years ago when the ADA was passed? Because if not, you shouldn't have opened your doors without having the appropriate, reasonable accommodations for persons with disabilities. And I do talks quite regularly, and to my shock, my audience started applauding when I suggested, if you haven't met your standards, you shouldn't be licensed. That's what our law requires. Now, when I look at Bill 317-37, I'm called back to the earlier bill, which is 2937. And I'm particularly called to Section 3 of that bill, which provides, in the event a school or operator is unable to comply with certain requirements of these rules and regulations, upon a showing of good cause that is not the result of negligence or malfeasance, and if a correction action plan is in progress, the director may grant a variance of the requirements of the particular rule by making a written determination. And then it continues on. The reason I'm bringing this forward is because a year ago or so, when you passed this bill, you envisioned difficulties in the schools passing inspection based upon their condition. And you provided a tool in which the school system can keep their schools open. So I guess my first question is, for the 18 schools that aren't slated to be inspected, do you all have 18 requests for variances? Because that would seem to be the answer. We know we're not going to make it. We're substantially complying. We'll put our packet together, we'll submit it to the director, and ask the director to give us a variance. I don't know if that's occurred. I don't know if a single variance has been requested. I'm told there may have been. I can't seem to find them. They're probably buried somewhere in your legislative record somewhere. But that would be my first question, where I'm looking at saying, okay, we're not going to put any standard on you. We're going to say that you can decide to operate if you decide to operate. And that, to me, says, let's give all the power to the same people that haven't performed accordance with Guam law. Let's let them decide whether they can operate, because we didn't comply with Guam law, but now we want an opportunity to say, without seeking a variance, without coming before you and saying, here are our inspection reports, because each of the sites were inspected within the last month. Have they been presented to you? Do you even know what's wrong with these schools? You've got 18 of them that were all inspected within May, June, and July. Have you been presented with the information as to why these schools have been passed? Is there something going on, for example, at George Washington High School that suggests that it's a danger for students to enter? We already know it's not passing health inspection. We know it's not passing Guam law. So I guess what my thought is, as a parent of children who attended all public schools throughout their education, what are we doing to prevent what's happened in the past? We haven't avoided double session. That's already occurring. I remember when GW was double sessioned with George Washington, and my son and his cross-country and track team would all be in my house from noon until when track started. And of course, my wife would be feeding them all by buying Hot Pockets, and we had a regular flow of Hot Pockets flowing through our fridge and our freezer. And honestly, I liked it. I liked seeing those young gentlemen. I liked being able to interact with them every time I came home from lunch. But that's not what they should be doing. They should be in school. They should be getting their education. So in looking at this, I question two things before you act. Do you have the request for variances? And are we making a knowledgeable decision? And number two, do we have the inspection report so we can see exactly what it is we're saying isn't important? Because that's basically what we're saying. We're saying that whatever's not rated on this health inspection is not important to us. The information's available. It should have been provided to the legislature already, each of these health inspections. So is that information available? I know we're in a dilemma. I'm not jumping up here saying to you all, close all these schools, shut down half of the Department of Education. But I am saying to you, if it's not healthy, and if they haven't sought a variance, they haven't done their due diligence. They haven't done their job to provide for it. And are we going to come back again next July and again be presented with another bill that says, oh, we need to keep the schools open for another year because we still have 19 schools that haven't passed inspection? That's my concern. My other grave concern is DOE schools that have failed inspection may continue to operate at the discretion and approval of the superintendent of DOE. Can we put the fox in charge of the hen house any greater than that? We don't even look to an independent body. We don't look toward public health. We say, if superintendent, you say it's okay, that's okay with us. I like the superintendent, but I don't like giving anyone blank checks, and I certainly don't. So I stand opposed to the bill, and I stand opposed to it because I believe that the current law in place provides everything the Department of Education needs. And if they haven't sought variances, then I believe that word that you put in the law. And as a result of negligence or malfeasance. Malfeasance is a very legal term, and I'll be honest, I had to look it all up a few years back because we have nonfeasance, where someone does nothing. We have misfeasance, where someone tries to do something but doesn't quite get it right. And then we have malfeasance, which is where I didn't even try, I don't care. That's my concern. Are we looking at malfeasance? Because if we don't have the variances, what do we have? I believe at that point we have malfeasance. And if they haven't provided you the school self-inspection data, why not? Why isn't that part of what they're seeking here? Where is those inspection reports? I would point out one other thing that was put forward in the superintendent's PowerPoint. We now have 7 schools that in August need to be re-inspected. Are we not going to re-inspect them? Because we're going to pass this bill? And I would point out to you one thought. A school inspection is a picture in time. It is what is happening at that particular time at that particular school. It doesn't say what's happening there 6 months after the inspection, that school is still meet public health standards. It is solely a picture in time. And that is helpful. I don't minimize the value of a picture in time. But if we're talking about schools that have 72 demerits, 73 demerits, what's the picture in time today? The picture in time is that students shouldn't be going to that school unless they have followed the law and sought a variance. And I assume there are variances because I know schools have whole sections of them closed off because the buildings are not safe. I'm assuming that would be a variance, saying this part of the school's not going to be open. We're going to cordon it off. We're going to put up, in my mind's eye, we're going to put up a huge chain link fence, but I know chain link fences are very difficult right now for the Department of Education. So something to say to kids, you can't go in there. And even that, I would opine, for middle schoolers, perhaps for high schoolers, as soon as someone says to you, you can't go in there, that's where you want to go. Why can't we go in there? We can sneak in there when no one's looking. Are we creating attractive nuisances for our own kids where they can get hurt? So I'm very appreciative to come before you. I'm very appreciative of the efforts that the Department of Education has made, but let's not throw out everything. Let's have them follow our laws, and let's make sure before we start doing a bill like this that they have sought variances. They have done everything in their power to get that school open. Because if not, we're going to be here again next year, we're going to be here the year after that, we're going to be here the year after that, and our kindergarten students will be graduating high school, and we will still be discussing about whether we should close schools that aren't safe, that aren't healthy environments, or whether we should just give them another year. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My wife wanted me to add one comment for anyone who's familiar with our public schools. Please think about the temporary classrooms, the ones that have been sitting on our schools forever. Agana Heights, I believe, had 5 temporary classrooms until Principal Gutierrez came in, and basically she looked at them and said, the floors are spongy. We've fixed the floors 4 or 5 times, and they're still spongy. These are not a safe environment for our kids. And she made the hard decision at that point. This was when Agana Heights was still the booming school, and everyone wanted their kids to go there. She said, I'm closing these. I'm not going to allow kids into these, quote, 20-year-old temporary classrooms. And we're going to decrease the population of Agana Heights by 100 students by closing 5 classrooms. But that's what we need to do. And that's what she proceeded to do. So I bring that story up because I wonder how many temporary classrooms are still in existence that are over 20 years old. And I wonder what their condition is. Because the one in Agana Heights that were there forever were in horrendously awful condition. So I thank you for the opportunity. I'm sure when I get back, my wife will tell me everything I should have brought up, as she usually does. But I did get the story of the Agana Heights temporary classrooms in. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Pseudo Smasi Attorney Summerfleck. Yeah, you did raise a lot of good points that I agree with, and we'll go ahead and ask the panel some of those questions. But before we do, I did want to read into the record the testimony from the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Wish they would have been here in person, but the testimony is from the director, the acting director, Teresa Arreola. And it's regarding Bill 317-37, and it reads, Hafaday Committee Chair Senator Barnett, committee members, as well as members of the 37th Guam Legislature, the Department of Public Health and Social Services would like to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak on Bill 317-37, an act to authorize the operation of Guam public schools that are awaiting inspection for school year 24-25, authored by Senator Nicolas. The Public Health Division of Environmental Health has collaborated with the Guam Department of Education through weekly meetings. It is through these weekly meetings that GDOE informs DPHSS which school they believe will pass inspection and is ready to be inspected by the Division of Environmental Health. The department views Bill 317-37 as an extension of Public Law 37-32. If passed into law, Bill 317-37 would allow for DPHSS to continue inspecting schools with minimal learning disruption. However, unlike Public Law 37-32, Bill 317-37 will give the superintendent the authority to allow a school that has failed inspection to remain open. Regardless if Bill 317-37 passes or not, the Division of Environmental Health will continue school inspections as required by law. Lastly, we recommend the following underlying language as an amendment to Section 2. And the amendment they suggest is to the section that reads, notwithstanding any provisions of law, the GDOE is hereby authorized to operate schools that are awaiting inspection for school year 2024, and this is the new language they're suggesting, to 2025, only after such schools have provided a written request for an inspection to the Division of Environmental Health of the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Such schools may operate until inspection is complete. GDOE schools that have failed inspection may continue to operate at the discretion and approval of the superintendent of GDOE. So that's the testimony from the Public Health Director. I got to say, though, I mean, sometimes with this testimony from public health, you know, on one day of the week, they say we have to inspect the schools. It's our mandate because they're vulnerable populations at these schools, meaning, you know, our young people, and they've said as much in this public hearing room. Although this testimony seems to be in support of the bill. And I agree with Attorney Summerfleck. I think there are actually a few existing laws on the books that allow the continued operation of GDOE schools, but you know, the variances for us was a big part of how we were able to work around a lot of parts of schools that, quite frankly, if they were inspected, would lead to a lot of our schools failing inspection. So Administrator Anderson, in the last oversight hearing, I had requested these self-inspection reports from the schools. I don't think we received them, though. And I agree again with Attorney Summerfleck. If we're having this discussion, I think that the openness and the transparency comes by laying out all the cards on the table and saying, hey, if we're talking about allowing schools that haven't been inspected to continue operating, then what are the conditions at these schools? But I guess, you know, first I'd like to ask, what variances have been granted by Public Health, and do you continue to work to apply for variances relative to schools that are awaiting inspection and schools that have already been inspected?
Thank you, Senator Barnett, for that question. Just a couple things. I made reference in my testimony, the public health inspection status link on the DOE webpage. I don't know if your technicians are able to bring up our website, but I'd be more than happy to try and walk everyone through that link so that everyone knows where they can access all of the products that are put together by the task force. One of the important products that is part of that drive or that link are all the variances the Department of Education has submitted to public health. So Nick Cruz, our main lead for CIP, is the main person interfacing with public health in terms of these variances. And he's created an Excel spreadsheet summary that lists all of the variances that have been submitted and then the actual variances themselves that have been submitted to public health and disposition. So we may not have given it to you directly via an email. My recommendation to the superintendent was, of course, to just make reference to the link just to save effort here, because not just for the variances, but again, there are a lot of other products that are up there too. You can see in terms of transparency, the weekly meetings that are happening with this task force to address school readiness and specifically the challenges that schools are facing with public health inspections. And I appreciate Dan Summerfleck's comments. Of course, he's been working with the Department of Education for quite some time now. But it's important to make a distinction between self-inspections and public health inspections. So again, part of that partnership that we've had with public health to create a DOE school sanitation program, which was basically public health putting together different products to help guide the department in terms of how to self-inspect itself. So we've used those products, obviously, and that we have a system in place to, again, make sure that schools who have 2 identified school safety liaisons from every school get training every year, and that they do these inspections as if they were a public health inspector. And so they do these reports, they submit them to central office, and then they are also put on the website so that the community can see where these schools are at. And so I can understand the concern that when you see a school like Southern High School that's reflecting 77 demerits on a self-inspection, yes, that is failing. Anything beyond 40 is considered a failure from public health standards. However, there's also another column on this spreadsheet that we manage that has the FM validation score. So we send our facilities and maintenance personnel out to these schools that have reflected demerits of 40 or greater to verify whether or not the demerits of the school is citing for themselves is accurate or not. And in the case of Southern High School, although still failing grade, the number of demerits was validated to be 56 versus 77. So I just bring this to the attention of the senators to let you know that, again, it's just because the school does a self-inspection and gives themselves a score doesn't necessarily mean that it's very accurate. It's, of course, them giving their best impression, and more importantly, it's giving us an idea of what those specific areas that need to be addressed by facilities and maintenance. But as I indicated in my statement, this is a very challenging effort on the part of facilities and maintenance because, again, a lot of their efforts are focused on schools that are getting ready for inspection or emergencies. It's one or the other. That's really all they can do at this time. So if Southern High School is not up for inspection immediately, their efforts are not at Southern High School, even though we have categorized or identified specifically what the issues that Southern High School has in terms of what needs to be addressed for them to pass an inspection. Their efforts are primarily geared towards the schools that are currently under inspection. So right now, as I mentioned, Maria Joa is currently under inspection right now, so the teams are focused up there. We've got Marshall Sablon that's also identified to be inspected shortly after Ujoa is finished, and so he has teams up there. And then, of course, you've got, daily responses to different emergencies with, pipes busting or, schools vandalized and so forth. And so he's got the other remaining personnel responding to these daily emergencies that have to be addressed. So, I mean, the maximum range for an excuse is 0. I got that. But I just think it's important for us to talk in context of where the department's at and, to assure the public that, we're not just resting on our laurels. I mean, I know Dan Summerfleck was going through an explanation, I guess, of the differences from a legal perspective in terms of, what is, what was the word again, Dan? Malfeasance, there we go. But I can assure you that the Department of Education is not malfeasant in this regard. I mean, we are doing everything that I think we can humanly possibly do with limited resources to try and make sure that our schools are inspected and that our schools are able to pass these inspections. And they're not easy. Again, with limited resources for the Department of Education, and I got it. We've got a lot of money tied up in...
I just have to butt in here, Administrator, because the superintendent, we just had a conversation last week, and he says it's not about the money, and you keep mentioning the funding and resource challenges, but, I kind of look at it like you come in and you ask for $5 billion, and then you get, $1 billion, you know what I mean? That's still a significant amount of funding. I'm not saying that's what you guys have gotten, But I will say that the enrollment continues to decline. That's what we've heard out of GDOE. We did increase your budget over the prior year, and then you have hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funds. So my conversation with the superintendent last week, went up to GW Gym, looked at the moldy duct work, was told by one of the staff at GW that, oh, it's money, we don't have money for it. Called the superintendent. He said the one thing we are not right now is GDOE is not broke. So I don't really agree with you that it's a funding issue. Yeah, and of course, I'm very cognizant of all the funding challenges that have, plagued the Guam Department of Education at the legislature. And I'm not saying they ended, at the start of my term, but I am saying that with enrollment down and with the blessing of all these federal funds, I think the challenge has really been the lack of help. And I'm like a broken record. I've been saying the same thing for 2 years. The Guam Department of Education, God bless your hearts, facilities maintenance, school aides, everybody has done tremendous work to bring us to this point. And, and this is a point we've really never been in before, where we're saying to our people, if we're going to send these kids into schools, that, they should at the very least be able to pass a public health inspection. And, I'm tired of people looking at me like I'm an alien when I say those things. This is just a basic standard that should be applicable. If it's in restaurants, then it should be also applicable to our schools. And again, I feel like the law that we passed allowed you guys the flexibility to continue moving forward. And, I don't necessarily agree that there's a crisis to be averted, with this bill's introduction. I think that we just continue to move forward. But there are a lot of different things that didn't happen. And one of those is that the administration, through the Lieutenant Governor, in a press release in February last year, said that the whole of Gov Guam was going to be used to fix the schools, and that never materialized. And so just a couple weeks ago, in talking with the superintendent, he said it's not funding, it's more staffing and having people who have the professional expertise to really do a lot of these things at the school sites. And so these public health rules and regulations relative to school sanitation and safety were passed by the legislature in 2019, and GDOE was given 5 years to come into compliance. Now, the department had originally asked for 20 years to come into compliance. And so when I got into office, it was in the news, the rats, the mold, all those things. And so seeing that and seeing that the Lieutenant Governor, through his press release, was willing to engage the whole of government to address the schools, I thought this is a great time to introduce something that says, hey, we don't want to wait any longer for this standard. We want this standard now. And then, the typhoon hit and all hell broke loose. And I said it on the floor last year, if we kick this can down the road for another year, we're going to come back here in a year, and it's going to be, can we get another year? So I just want to keep moving forward. But at the same time, I think we need to, it's never really been about the timelines. It's always been about the safety of our kids and all the staff at the school. So if we're having this conversation, I think we have to be honest about what those conditions are. Now, while there may have been rats and mold at the start of last school year, I think it's just a little bit different because we've raised that level of awareness, but without seeing these self-inspection reports, which I'm going to have a look at, we don't really have an accurate picture. But what I like to believe is that it isn't necessarily a conversation about mold and rats now. It's more a conversation about these are the schools that, by GDOE's own admission, are the worst off in the worst condition. These are the Tier 3 schools that have yet to be inspected. And this committee and this legislature, outside of introducing a bill like this, we've done everything. We've had monthly oversight hearings. The superintendent came and said, hey, can you introduce a bill that, with the support of public health, we're able to get passed that staggered and allowed the sanitary permits to be expired on the date of their issuance. So that was one thing that we did. But again, to come back in here a year later and say we want another year, it really, for me, to have that honest conversation, we have to talk about what are going to be the conditions in these schools. And there's been other factors as well. We have this blessing of these federal funds, but we can't move forward on the contract because the last time we had the superintendent in here, he said the contract cleared the AG's office and it was sitting over on the governor's desk. And the longer that contract sits, the longer it takes to get this work started, and the longer and the farther away we are from really keeping this standard in place. So there are a lot of questions, I think, that need to be answered, and it's not for a lack of trying. I do want to commend the Guam Department of Education, but again, with the amount of resources and the promised help that never materialized. Could we have done more? I'm pretty sure, you know, a reasonable person would say, yes, we should have, so.
Well, on a positive note, I just got notification from our legal counsel that the 4 contracts that were pending signature from the governor have been signed, so that's a good sign.
BIBA, right on.
Yes.
That's great.
So these major refurbishment contracts that impact those 8 schools will hopefully start in the near future.
Nice, and so that's the $80 million, correct?
Right, and again, just going back to the issue of variance, because I think it's important for us to have that conversation as well.
Yeah, so Administrator Anderson, if you could, so I know that the first few variances that you guys had applied for last year were relative to ceiling tiles. I think there was also a variance about ACs, and then I know there was a recent variance about wall paint. So what other variances have you guys applied for?
Well, Public Health has given us the guidance in our weekly meetings that they frown on asking for blanket variances, so the variances have to be submitted for each individual school. I would need to look at the document to give you an idea of the different variances that have been submitted for every school, but I can assure you that we have the summary document that identifies all the different schools, their variances that they submitted, and a disposition that we have from Public Health as to whether they've approved them or not. But in terms of Dan Summerfleck's comment about the variance issues and why don't we just submit the variances as a, you know, I guess as a solution to these 19 schools that are pending inspection, that's just not how it works. Variances, for one, in terms of Public Health's perspective, is that they only consider those variances not for the purposes of helping a school pass an inspection. So a school needs to be up for inspection. We submit these I mean, we can submit the variances ahead of an inspection, but the point being is that when a school is up for inspection, the school has to be able to pass its inspection on its own, not considering the variance. They will entertain the variances for the purposes of us submitting it, but strangely enough, it's not factored in terms of helping a school pass an inspection. So I think it's important that if folks think that these variances are the panacea for DOE, they're not. I mean, we have the ability by law to submit them, and we do, but as per public Health's perspective, they are not designed or used in terms of helping a school pass an inspection. So we have to be very calculated, I think, when we approach these inspections, and I do appreciate Director Ariola's comments regarding our partnership with Public Health, because we meet every week, and I think we have a very good working relationship, and they've been very supportive of DOE in terms of the pacing of these inspections. So we're quite methodical and calculated in terms of who we bring up for inspection, and we try our best to make sure that we're at least 90% confident the school's going to pass the inspection before we turn it on. And thank you to Public Health for, again, working with us and allowing us the ability to slow down the inspection process so that we can make sure that a school, once it gets turned on for inspection, it's going to, at least with 90% confidence, pass that inspection. Because the ramifications, as was already mentioned by Dr. Adamas, are pretty significant in terms of schools closing, having to work on online. I mean, I don't know if you guys recall the Tumuni Elementary and LBJ scenario from last school year, but it was quite painful for that community to not have their students in school and the effects that it has on in terms of academic learning. So we don't want that, obviously. I know you guys aren't asking for it either, but the realities are, right, as the law is written, if these schools are not inspected and passed, they cannot operate. And so it's pretty straightforward in terms of what the, you know, requirements are and what the ramifications will be if we don't meet those requirements. So I just want to put that out there. That again, I think our schools are safe. What Dr. Adamas, as the Deputy Superintendent for Educational Support and Community Learning, what she does with our schools as part of the readiness requirement is that the schools have to submit their declaration of readiness and that their schools are safe and ready to open. And I believe today is the deadline for that, for her to receive those declarations from the schools. And I can assure you that our school principals, whether they pass an inspection or not, would not declare that their schools were safe and ready to open if they indeed were not. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Anderson. Yeah, and I don't think just a comment on the variances, they were never designed to let you off the hook. You know, when you apply for the variance, you can't just say, oh, we don't have AC, deal with it. The variance comes that you don't have air conditioner, then you have to have a fan or some other way to mitigate the request that you're making, correct? Right. Okay, so I'll just defer now to the bill's main sponsor. Did you have questions for the panel, sir?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again for your testimony. Sir, how do these break-ins affect your ability to, you know, to work toward properly getting the school prepared for inspections? Do they hamper your efforts?
Absolutely. Not only do they hamper our ability to focus on getting schools ready, but it reallocates or redirects limited resources, of course, to those schools to have to address them. So again, I talked about two major issues or two major areas that facilities and maintenance personnel are focused on. One is getting a school ready for a public health inspection. The other one are emergencies. And, of course, break-ins fall into the second category. But when Mr. Pangilinan has to send folks up to go and address a break-in, he's also having to use limited resources he has in inventory to try and get those schools either secured and whatever damages were sustained to have them fixed and ready for that school. So it does negatively impact our ability to move forward.
And have you guys had any, since we were allowed to open up the schools this last school year, have there been any incidents with schools that were open in spite of inspection? Any incidents, any occurrences, any mishaps, perhaps, by opening a school that wasn't inspected?
Well, I think we have. I mean, we've probably had some incidents that happened in schools in terms of maybe a light fixture, the diffuser falling on a student, and I think that was a school that had some work that was being done by one of our partners in the community. That was there's a grant. I think it's a Siemens grant with GPA. They were out there and helping us change our lighting systems and try and make us more energy efficient. And the folks that were responsible for putting up the light fixture, I think they didn't put it up correctly, and the diffuser, I think, fell on a student. So yes, there have been incidents, I'm sure, that being one of them. But again, these are few and far between, and again, not a reflection in terms of whether our schools are a safe place for our students to be.
Well, most of the, I can understand that could be maybe negligence or maybe a malfunction of something perhaps, but I was thinking more of like maybe the entire school getting sick because of mold.
No.
Not one incident.
No, it's not to my knowledge.
Okay. And how many of these schools' cafeterias have passed inspection?
My understanding is 100% of them have. The 100% of the cafeterias who've been inspected have passed their inspections.
So all of them are A and can serve food. All of them.
I believe so. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to know. All right. What I don't want to do is I was a school counselor at the time when during the pandemic, and I saw how frustrating online learning was for our students, our teachers, our administrators. It was a horrible, horrible situation, and I want to avoid that entirely. We need to get our students into the classroom, and we got to find a way to do it and do it safely. And let's take a more pragmatic approach. I know, Mr. Summerfleck, not everything is, it's, black and white. We have to work sometimes within the confines of what we have. And I'm here to make sure, all the politics aside, put it all aside. Let's try to work together to try to find solutions. And I'm pretty sure there are portions of schools that are operable, and I feel that our administrators, our people we entrust with the safety of our children, our administrators, superintendent, I feel that we should give them that authority and give them that leeway, so that way we can get the schools. I know it's frustrating. Just online learning, it's so frustrating, and I wouldn't want to subject our students to double sessions as well. I mean, it's just
right.
It's and so I'm really willing to help this along and try to find solutions so we all come together and make learning fun again and bring our students back into the classroom and get them fed. Because one of my concerns too is, as a school counselor, I couldn't believe one of the students says, Mr. Nicolas, lunch is free. I said, what? Lunch is free? He says, yeah, because the whole entire island is pretty much low income, right? So that's where they come to get their food. Some of these kids come to school just to eat.
That's right.
Never mind about the parental guidance that wonderful teachers give them. They come to school to eat. you know, and I don't want to deny these students the opportunity to get a good hot meal.
Yeah, and I just qualify too that the cafeteria inspections and school inspections are actually done independently. They're not the same. So food nutrition under Sean Manforti, he takes care of those inspections. And again, my understanding is that we are 100% with all of them passing, and a lot easier, not as much heavy lifting to get these cafeterias to pass their inspections like it is with, you know, the rest of the facility.
That's very good. We needed to know that because, you know, they spend a great deal in cafeterias too, right? But
right, absolutely, every day.
It was brought to my attention, you know, as a educator, how important it is to have and then you saw during the pandemic how many people lined up for lunches, right. You know, that's a telling thing, you know, that's very telling of how important it is.
And I thank you, Senator, for bringing the issue up about meals, because you're right. There are students, there's a segment of our population that come to school and the breakfast and lunch that they receive is the only meal that they get for the day. So I would say that it is a crisis, that we have 19 schools that would be shut down if this bill does not come to fruition. So again, I think the Department of Education is under the microscope in terms of it trying to meet these public health standards and requirements. And you know, aside from the website that I made reference to in terms of the transparency with documents and products that are put forth by the task force, I mean, senators are always welcome, of course, to even follow us along on these inspections so you can see exactly what it is that we have to go through in order to get these schools inspected. But I can assure you that we are doing everything humanly possible. Well, again, this issue about money, whether money is not an issue or whether it's staffing or skill set of people who can do some of the work that we need, there's obviously a lot of different challenges that we have to get these schools inspected. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here asking for the support of this particular bill that Senator Nicolas has introduced. But I think it is a crisis. If we have to tell our families on Guam that you know, half of 24,000 students are not going to be in school because these schools are closed as a result of this, that to me is a crisis.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And you know, we're going to work together to try to figure this out. But I do want all these schools to open as much as possible, as safely as possible. And I'd like to thank you and all the good work of the men and women of our Department of Education. You know, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to, you know, extrapolate what's politics and what's not. You know, the last department superintendent left with flying colors. Everybody was like, oh, you know, what a wonderful guy. You know, what a great thing he has done. Longest serving superintendent in all of the nation. And then the minute he leaves, we have, you know, this crisis that we're in. Like, when did this start? You know, that's one I want to find out. But most importantly, I want to find out how we can make things better. Put all that stuff aside. Let's try to figure out how we can make things better. And so that's where I'm coming with this bill. And I hope our chair and everybody else can all work together, you know, to keep our students safe and also provide the best meals and education we can for our students. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, panel. Thank you so much.
Senator Nicolas, and thank you again, Administrator Anderson. I'm not sure I agree, but I did hear the bill in good faith, you know, just in case. But I really, I think Attorney Summerfleck had brought up what's already on the books, and then we also passed a law last year, and this was Public Law 3731. And let me just read you this section of this section B. The Guam Department of Education public school facilities shall come into full compliance by the start of school year 2024-2025 with the requirements of these rules, and they're referencing the Public Health Schools Safety and Sanitation Guidelines, unless a public school facility or operator files a written statement of exception with the director and receives again the variances provided in subsection 4722. So have you or the superintendent filed a written statement of exception for any of these schools?
No, we have not.
Okay. And then
but again, I would also qualify that I don't believe maybe that's not what public health's understanding is about that provision in the law.
Sure.
We're not under the impression that we can just submit a letter indicating that this school is not ready to be opened or whatever, and ask for consideration for it to allow, you know, that school to continue to operate.
I appreciate that, but if you look at the rhetoric this time last school year, public health was all over everywhere saying, oh, nobody can go into the schools, and we're just not hearing that this year. And I've also, I believe that a bill that Senator Nicolas had previously introduced and passed, Public Law 3732, also allows for the Guam Department of Education to have the authority to operate any school awaiting inspection in 23-24 school year. And so all of these schools that haven't been inspected were awaiting inspection in 23-24. There's no sunset in that law. There's no timeline. There's nothing that says that they can only operate schools awaiting inspection in school year 23-24 in school year 23-24. So I think there's a lot of different options here, and I just don't agree that in a week and a half, we're going to see a big crisis where kids can't go to school because the schools won't be open. I think you have a lot of authority, well, not necessarily you, but the superintendent or the acting superintendent. I think the authority is there for you to continue moving forward. And, with that being said, when we talk about moving forward, I guess acting superintendent, this would be a question for you. If we continue moving forward, or GDOE avails of any one of these options in existing law, or we go into session and pass this bill, whichever of those options is going to happen, there's a lot of authority being given to the Guam Department of Education. So how would you guarantee that students would be safe? Because like I said, in the beginning of last year, it was a little bit of a different conversation with rats and the mold, and I agree, DOE is under the microscope. Like, people pay attention more than ever, and the cleanliness, safety, sanitation of our schools is just part of the conversation in a way that it has never been before. But we're talking about schools that need major construction work, and so I had a parent, said, so we're now going to send the kids into these construction zones. Are we going to give them a hard hat? So what plans, if any, does GDOE have to ensure student safety in these schools that are, by your own admission, going to be undergoing major refurbishment and construction work?
Thank you for that question. We have been discussing it in our school readiness task force that once the our contracts are signed, the contractor will work with the school administration to pretty much establish the scope of work that needs to be done and to segment the school in terms of if this awning is going to be fixed, ensure that it's blocked off so that the students don't walk in that area. And so it's just a matter of ensuring we place the students, move them to different classrooms so that work can go on and learning and teaching are not hindered, and safety is in place for students and teachers and our employees as well. So we don't plan on shutting down the schools for construction. And
do you believe that there needs to be a waiver or anything passed out to parents who are going to have students attending schools that are under construction or otherwise haven't passed or been inspected by public health?
Sorry, a waiver regarding?
Basically saying, hey, my kid's going to this school. If a hollow block drops on their hard hat, can't get sued.
I think the school administration will have to meet with the parents and let them know the work that will be done. And, it always helps in the school setting when the administrators and teachers talk to the students, this area is off limits. And then we also send memos to the parents to please help us to enforce the rules, because yes, we are in loco parentis, right? But if we have some students, and we know it, they get curious, like what Attorney Summerflex said, do not enter, and they enter because they just want to see why they can't. We need people boots on the ground, right, to basically keep our eyes on in the hallways to ensure the students aren't in that area. But I think communicating what work is being done week after week, if it's an awning, for example, and that's what's being worked on, I don't think we need hard hats because no one will be in that area. Okay, if it's restrooms, of course, we need to ensure that we have the minimum number of toilets and urinals required before we can block off a restroom that's going to be fixed. So it's just strategizing, communicating, and making sure the work is being done quickly and efficiently.
Thank you, Acting Superintendent. Senator Nicolas, did you want to close on the bill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'm just trying to bring us all together and trying to find ways where we can, make the school system work and bring the kids back into school. As a school counselor, I had one child says, Mr. Nicolas, and I know I maybe shouldn't say this, but he says, can I make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? I said, sure, You know what she did? She ended up making the whole loaf of peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And she goes, Mr. Nicolas, I'm going to take some home to my brothers and my sisters because we don't have anything to eat. Closing schools down prevents students like that from getting a meal. Closing schools down prevents one-on-one contact with their peers. Schools are sacred to me. They're wonderful places where, kids learn and grow. And I wouldn't want to take that away from them. And so we have to find every way we can to keep them all open as much as we can. And I entrust and I believe that our administrators and our superintendents would not put our students in harm's way. I just know it. It's just one of those things, And I think putting all the politics aside and the finger pointing and all that stuff we're beyond that. That's so 90s. Let's work together. Let's move forward and let's do this for the best, for our students. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, panel.
Can I just make one last comment, if you don't mind? Based on Senator Barnett's comment about there's enough law or there's existing laws that should be able to help us in terms of getting the schools open for next school year. Again, our understanding is that that's not the case, that without this passage of this bill, the bill that, and I forget the actual number of the bill that Senator Nicolas submitted last year and was passed into law that gave us the ability to operate pending inspections, sunsetted at the end of the 23-24 school year, and so therefore that protection does not exist anymore. That's why this bill is necessary for us to get another extension into school year 24-25. If that is not the case, I think it's important that maybe senators have that kind of discussion because we are under the impression that we need this bill to become law in order for us to be able to operate the remaining, all of our schools, but specifically the 19 schools that have not been inspected when school starts, hopefully, on Thursday, August 8th.
I'd like to get that in writing. Is that an advice from your council? Or is that just something you guys have come up with based on your own estimation? Because it's a simple read. I didn't see any sunset or expiration in Senator Nicolas's Public Law 37-32, and there is definitely an allowance in Public Law 37-31 that allows you to make a written request for exemption. So I again, disagree, Administrator Anderson, but I am hearing the bill in good faith because that's what the committee is doing. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, and again, just because, if I could just stress the issue, because I understand that
we're not trying to debate you, Administrator.
No, just that the timeline, right? Because obviously school starts very shortly, and I know you guys only have a limited number of sessions to be able to introduce or to entertain bills and get them passed. If we could just really make sure that we're clear about this understanding about the need for this bill, because again,
have you requested an opinion from your legal counsel? I've written to the AG and we're awaiting clarification.
No, we've included them in the discussion for the need of this bill. I can't speak specifically as to whether or not they've concurred with our understanding, but the reverse, they have not said, no, your understanding is incorrect. So I'm just saying we have a very limited window here to make this happen, and I would just, it would be tragic to realize that, no, the bill does need to be in place.
Right,
and
but I
schools
think,
can't open.
but Administrator Anderson, again, if the committee believed that, then, we would act appropriately. But all of the indications from the superintendent on down has been that we are going to continue to move forward and continue to prepare for the opening of schools in the 2024-2025 school year. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Of course.
And, just for the record, GDOE approached me to introduce this bill, and I declined introducing it because I believe that, you guys have the authority based on existing law to continue moving forward, to continue holding this standard, and to continue ensuring our kids are safe in the schools, that they're going to schools that are meeting the basic sanitation guidelines, even if those schools are pending public health inspection. So I'd like to thank you all for your testimony here today. And if there are no further questions or comments, and it looks like there aren't any, this concludes this public hearing. We'll convene another public hearing this afternoon to hear Bills 250, 281, and 293. Now, the committee will continue to accept written statements on today's hearing within 10 business days from today, which may be mailed to the office on the second floor of the Guam Congress Building at 163 Challenge Santa Papa in Agustin. You may also send your statements to us at malfunction@guamlegislature.org. Thank you all for your participation. This public hearing is hereby adjourned at 1:08 Chamorro Standard Time. Guahusi Senador Chris Malfunction Barnett, está, adios.